What is Greater Israel?
Greater Israel means, depending on how crazy the people are, either that Israel controls not only its geographic territory, but that it essentially controls or annexes the West Bank, the Golan Heights, which they've just enlarged, Gaza.
Golan Heights being part of Syria historically.
It was part of Syria. It's claimed by Israel and now with an expanded territory, and East Jerusalem. So everything that was captured in 1967, Netanyahu explicitly said, we're never giving that back. Now, there are two motivations for that. One, Netanyahu says not safe to give it back because he doesn't want to negotiate any kind of peace or any state of Palestine. Then there are religious zealots, I would use even stronger terms, who use the book of Joshua, which is 2,700 years ago, that said, well, God gave us everything from the river in Egypt, meaning the Nile, to the Euphrates. And there are zealots in Israel, and they're in the government, who believe, yes, this is God's ordinance. We're going to take whatever we want.
The Nile to the Euphrates would include what?
Well, if you take the greater view of this, it would include Lebanon, it would include Syria, it would include part of Iraq, it would include part of Egypt, and some of these people actually quote the Bible and say we're going to do this, and it's a little sad and absolutely terribly frightening. But I'd say the more narrow vision is what they call from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. That's taken as a pro-Palestinian chant, but it's exactly the opposite. It is the Greater Israel literal vision of the government of Israel. It's the literal idea. There happen to be 7 million Palestinians there. That's a minor problem. Maybe they can be ethnically cleansed. Maybe they can be thrown out. Maybe they can just be ruled in a military dominant way. Of course, probably well over 100,000 have been killed in the most recent war by Israel. Official count 45,000 of bodies claimed from the rubble, but we know that there are a lot more that have died since this war in Gaza began. But all of this is to say, this Greater Israel idea says we can't make peace with the Palestinians, so anyone that supports the Palestinians is, by definition, a mortal threat to us, and when you have a mortal threat, you must destroy it. And so this is the opposite of diplomacy. It's war, and as Netanyahu crowed last week, it's war to remake the Middle East. It's all spelled out, by the way, in very clear ways, but you have to dig for them. You have to find them. You have to understand that this is long-standing. You have to understand that each president has played part of that role. So when we come back to Obama, he started the war with Syria in 2011. I can remember actually vividly the call that Assad must go. Turned out it was going to be 13 years of mass war, 300,000 dead, and destroying a country. That's what it turned out to be. But Obama signed an order called Operation Timber Sycamore. People should look it up. You can find it online, but you can't find it in the mainstream media because it's not discussed. But it was a so-called presidential finding that the CIA should work with Turkey, with Saudi Arabia, with others to overthrow the government of Syria. So that was the plan. We went to war. We had...
this is what led to Benghazi, correct?
Benghazi is Libya. So Libya.
I understand.
Yes, but it was the same time in 2011.
But my understanding was the reason there were so many American intel assets there was because they were moving arms from Libya to
Oh, sorry. Yes, if you say it that way.
Syria.
One of the first things was to establish a rat line, so-called, from Libya to Syria. Absolutely. And Seymour Hersh wrote a terrific piece explaining all of that.
But that was never explained. I mean, I worked at a news organization at the time that made a lot out of Benghazi and the death of a U.S. ambassador and, what was the Obama administration, thinking. They were so negligent. But there was never any discussion about what they were doing there in the first place.
No, none of this is explained, of course. It's none of the public's business. This is our business. We're the war machine. You stay out of this. So none of this is explained. Interestingly, the whole Syrian operation, I think I counted right that the New York Times mentioned Operation Timber Sycamore, I think 3 times in the 2010s. So a war that cost billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, CIA operation, covert action, links with Libya, never explained, never discussed. And even when the government falls last week, no background given. We're supposed to have amnesia. We're not supposed to understand that what happens is the result of long-term plans that have been pretty disastrous. And by the way, as I've said, Israel has driven so many American wars. And we say, absolutely, yes, that's our greatest ally. These have been at huge cost to the United States, cost of trillions of dollars, cost geopolitically. But somehow we gave away our foreign policy to Israel years and years ago, and it's been absolutely devastating. And it's interesting to go back and watch Netanyahu speak to the American people. Go look at a video clip of 2001, 2002. In 2002, in October, he comes and testifies in the Senate, and there's a nice clip of him promising how wonderful the war in Iraq is going to be. Because Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He says 100% certain. Complete lies, by the way, and they knew that they were lies at the time. And it's going to be wonderful. We're going to topple that dictator, and then dictators are going to be toppled everywhere, and the young people of Iran are going to rise up. This is his idea, together with his U.S. political consultants, together with neocons in the U.S. government for the last 25 years. They have never apologized for dragging the United States into countless wars in the Middle East, spending trillions of dollars running up U.S. debt, and doing what? Creating chaos. So just to go back to the 7 countries, because it's worth remembering, Lebanon, it barely exists as a functioning country right now. Syria, it's going to be picked to pieces. Don't believe. Well, it's obvious in what we're seeing every day. Territorial integrity, yeah. Israel's just invaded from the southwest into deeper Syria. Turkey from the north. Russia has its area. The United States and the Kurds have their area. This place is just going to be a battlefield for years to come. Iraq, we know what happened with Iraq. Trillions of dollars, a complete destabilization of the country. Look at the other 3 wars. The United States broke apart Sudan. Why? Well, Sudan was an enemy of Israel, so we have to break apart Sudan. So we supported the South Sudanese. Now we have the real trifecta: massive civil war in Sudan and massive civil war in South Sudan. In other words, we broke apart the country, and now there's civil war in both halves of the country. Somalia basically doesn't exist as a country. Libya, it doesn't exist. It's a battlefield. It's a war zone. So that's 6 out of 6. And Netanyahu's crowing, now we go on to Iran.